Okay, now that we have our more or less finished bent knee, we're going to have a little fun. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go into Dynamesh. We're going to chop this guy up a little bit. And what I want you guys to do is to go in and essentially do a skeletal knee, right? So really go in and dig out the forms of the condyles of the femurs, the patella, and the tibia, and also the fibula on the side. Why not? The idea being that we want to really see where these landmarks are superficial and the forms of the knee as a bony structure, because they really influence a lot of what we see in pretty much every articulation of the knee, but especially in really bent knees, 90 degrees and beyond, you really start to see some interesting forms from the condyles. Okay, so I'm going to kind of lead you through the first stages of this, and then I will time-lapse it, the rest of it, to get to the end in a timely manner. Okay, so what we're going to do first is I think we should probably duplicate our base model, what we have right here. So pretty much I'm going to keep a copy around to do some projections to and from if we lose details or we need more details back. So I'm just going to keep him, but I'll hide him. And for this guy, we're going to enter Dynamesh, right? And Dynamesh is located again under the Geometry tab. And we don't want this to be too much of a lossy process. I'd like to keep it at a decent resolution so that we can go in and clay tubes it and not lose too much detail. So I'm just going to try 512. Mesh has multiple subdivision levels. Would you like to freeze before entering Dynamesh? No. We're going to delete it ourselves. Okay, so let's just bake all and delete lower, and then we can enter Dynamesh. Okay, so I think we're there. Let's just turn our polyframe on, turn off our poly paint, and let's just see. Yep, so that's our resolution as it's going to be, and that's okay. Good enough for us. And some of you might want a lower resolution. That's fine, whatever your machine can handle. The thing we're going to do is we're going to get our slice curve, and pretty much I'm going to cut mid-thigh and mid-calf, actually upper calf and mid-thigh, something like this. And again, polyframe just to verify that you have your cuts. And then remember, as a refresher, you want to turn group mode on before you remesh. Okay, and a control drag will remesh it. And we should have isolated parts now. And I'm just going to do poly groups, auto groups. And we should get 3 groups, although I think I already have groups. I just don't have my coloration on. We just turn the colors on so we can confirm. Yep, so those are our colors. And right now, I just want to work on this guy because the other ones aren't really important. In fact, we could almost separate these into 3 different meshes and merge them at a later point. So let's do that, because eventually we're not going to be able to. We want to keep these guys separate, sculpt this up, and then merge them all together. And you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to the end of this little project, and you guys will also have a preview in the lecture beforehand. Okay, so if we go take our poly groups, and under our subtool menu, we can just do group split, not undoable, okay. And now we have 3 pieces. The middle, the top, and the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to turn these guys off. And what I might do is I will turn on our original mesh. And this is going to be kind of my reference for sculpting in our knee bones, right? Pretty much I want them to be close to the surface where they're subcutaneous, places around like the patella and the condyles in here. And then in these areas we can really start to sculpt in and start to subtract volume. Okay, so we might actually even just go in and do a little poly paint on our bony landmarks. So if you have Solo mapped, or you can grab Solo and just turn it on. And I'm going to do move standard brush, RGB, no Z add, and we'll just quickly, let's fill our Dynamesh with white, color fill object, and then we'll go red. And I'm just going to go in here, maybe somewhat less than 100, and just mark up my condyles, mark up the bony points here. Remember, we had our map originally when we were doing this little exercise, bending the knee, but when you Dynamesh, your UVs really go away. So we're kind of redoing a little bit of the work we've done. But this will be okay for what we need to do. Okay, that's our just a little bit of a guide for us to avoid. We could also kind of paint a mask, but I'm not going to be so cautious about that. So really, this is it. I'm going in with the clay brush, and I'm really starting to subtract volume. The idea being that we'll eventually get to something that resembles the femur. And you can do this any way that you want. I mean, we could even go possibly a little more extreme and do something like the how about something like clip curve. And really just smash things in this way. Quite effective to reduce volume. And really we don't want to go too much further in the front view because this is all bony. Push it in like this. And the thing about the clip curve is that it takes a little getting used to as far as which direction you have to go to get your gradient. You notice the little gray gradient going towards the line. You want that to be pushing in on your mesh. Otherwise you will you go the wrong direction. Okay, so we're kind of getting a little blockier, which is nice. I don't want to do too much on this side, but I do know where the head of the fibula will be like that. And I'm just going to, speaking of going the wrong direction, this is going the wrong direction. Undo that. Okay, so we're quickly kind of cutting our way into a form that might start to resemble the femur and the fibula and the tibia. Okay, and that's going to push that in. And it might be about time to Dynamesh some of this. So control drag. This is actually why I separated the meshes, is because I just want to Dynamesh this and I don't want to have to worry about the others being visible as I'm working through this construction. Okay, so let's see, we'll just go, I'm going to go with the clay brush still, just to really get in here and start to push these forms down. So what's starting to emerge is kind of the axis of the femur. And we're going to get out to the condyles here shortly. And there's a very kind of unique shape, and I'll try to give you guys as much reference as I can for constructing these in the course downloads, because it's important to have a good idea what you're trying to sculpt as you go. So I'm just going to push this little pocket in on the outside of the tibia and bring this down. Okay, and we're going to have to get a little bit more specific soon about the fibula and how those two meet. But for now, we'll just leave it off as we get up to just kind of cutting corners off. And soon we're going to have to switch brushes, because just cutting is not going to do it. We're going to want to turn RGB off, get Z-add back on. We're going to have to start to define the top of the tibial plateau that kind of contains the meniscus and kind of essentially what the condyles of the femur roll on. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm just pushing this in. We can make this a little more immediate with more intensity. And I'll make a sharper cut. And this is going to be a mess for a while, but as soon as it starts to get too messy, I'm going to time lapse it and get you guys to a good place a little bit quicker. But I'll talk through it as I go. So we have a little bit of stuff to cut out back there. Okay, coming through here, I'm just going to define the patella a little bit. And the patella really is just starting to sit in the gap in between the condyles at this point when you're getting to about 90 degrees. And then as you go even further than 90 degrees with a bent knee, the patella really starts to slide into the hole in between the condyles. Okay. So back with clay tubes, just going to try to define some of our transitions. And Dynamesh really is going to give us the ability to almost cut these guys out independent of each other. Right, so we'll get some really good pieces. There's some really good separation between our forms. Okay, as an intermediate check on where I'm going with this, I'm going to turn my bent leg on. So I'm going to leave solo mode, and we should see a good x-ray of what's happening. And maybe with this little x-ray, you guys will start to get the idea of what I intend. And actually, I will turn off our bent leg, and I'll turn on our other two. And I'm going to leave transparent. This is kind of where we're going. And we can do other cool things with this as we proceed. Since we have the original mesh, we'll have the Bony mesh. And then we will have our cutoff pieces. So we can do some interesting things visually. But the idea is overall for you guys to get an appreciation for the shape of the tibia and the condyles of the femur. Okay, so I'm going to continue to work this up, and you guys will see it go a little bit quicker as I start to time lapse this. Okay. And then you get a chance to do it on your own. Okay, so here we are refining the skeletal structure of the knee, and this really is just to show you that we're going to go in here and use slice curve to cut these things up. Right, we've already gone in with our clip curve and started to cut off edges and refine this. This is quickly just going to show you the next step, which is to start to slice them. And you can see actually behind the scenes, I've already clipped off or sliced off the fibula, right? And so now this is a separate piece, and it's going to give us the ability to just go in here and work correctly and make this look right. Okay, so I'm quickly going to run into this space where I need to cut the tibia off from the femur. And this is actually what I'm doing now. So I'm going to get a slice curve, hit a nice angle where I can just slice along the border. And in time lapse, it's done. It's only one stroke, so this is already cut off. And now you can see that it's going to give us the ability to go in there and actually re-sculpt this. So if I hide these parts, I can go in here and actually refine the plateau of the tibia and make it look correct. So drop in these little mating surfaces for the condyles, kind of where the some of the meniscus sit. You know, if you have a torn meniscus, the meniscus sit here. It's a nice little rolling surface for the condyles of the femur to sit on. Just refining this in general. And you guys have a little bit of reference included in this week's assignment download. Feel free to grab anything off the internet and use that as well, because for most part, a tibia is a tibia is a tibia. I just want you guys to get comfortable with the broad structures. So if you don't want to go too organic, you can very acceptably work up that simplification that I showed you in the lecture from Gottfried Bams, and just really get in there and schematically sculpt this. That would be very instructive. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up to you, organic or schematic and geometric. Do your best, and you can see that's it. So we have these pieces separated. Next I'll probably cut off the patella and make that its individual piece. Okay, so gotten to this point, and you're seeing me cut off the tibia, separate it from the femur, and I had already done the fibula, but I just want to show you the how I'm going to cut out the patella. So really it's just getting a good view on it, and then going in, making sure you have slice curve selected, and then we're just going to use a lot of little intermediate points. So you have to press Alt as you're going through your curve and let go, and you should see something nice when you do your polyframe. Okay, so that's pretty good. We've got a little bit of propagation up here, but let me just remesh with groups enabled, and we should have a separate patella now. So we'll be able to go in and get our condyles working pretty well, and we'll be able to get the patella sitting in its little interstitial space pretty easily as well. Okay, so that's it. That was just, again, slice curve to separate out the remaining bone. Okay, here we are back with the knee, and quick slice curve separates off the patella. And now we have all our parts, and we're going to refine and refine. So the first thing is to start to get some round shape to the condyles. A little bit of space in between where the patella is going to slip and slide down. So this is just a nice little container for the patella, and we're going to have condyles either side. You guys will be sick of me saying condyles for the next while. Condyles are everything about the knee. So there they go, the condyles. I'm not going to say much for this video. This is just literally refining a knee and trying to get it to match what we started with. So obviously all our landmarks need to line up between the two. And they did initially, and they're going to slip and slide a little bit, but eventually we'll get them back into place before it finishes. If you were so possessed, you could do some nice things with transparency and rendering and those sorts. Okay, so again, all this is Dynamesh, so I'm refining this, and things like these little artifacts will eventually go away as I get to them, and I'm remeshing intermittently. So putting a little refinement to the fibula, a little refinement to the patella. This is actually clay tubes. I've just turned on back face masking. This was somebody's tip in the forum under masking. right here, auto masking, turn on backface, and you can use clay tubes in this instance. Otherwise, when surfaces are really close, clay tubes will crush them together. So clay tubes with backface masking on will give you the ability to separate them. Useful thing to do sometimes. Okay, the patella has a little ridge going down the middle, and that little ridge helps it slide and stay oriented correctly in the groove in between the condyles. So at this point, most of the major forms are there in the knee. It's just literally looking at the reference and refining the forms to make them look organic, make them look kind of quite bony and structural. Okay, so and still there's a little bit of refinement to go still in the volumes and the overall shape. A turntable gone wrong. It was going off in space. So I'm just trying to harden up some of the surfaces. Again, you guys don't need to emulate this at all. You can do, well, eventually you want to have something that resembles tibia and femur, but it doesn't have to be exactly what I'm doing here. However, this does match the skeleton that I've given you the reference images for. So again, all the kind of crazy structures in here, you know, these are where kind of the cruciate ligaments go. You know, if you have kind of the crossing ligaments that hold the knee together, they kind of arise from those little knobs. This knee is one massive long freestyle, which is actually kind of the fun part. One thing that I will note on a serious note is that the lateral condyle has a very sharp, pronounced ridge on the outside, and it goes a lot higher than the medial condyle. Right, so the medial condyle is going to be low, and this one is actually going to protrude quite a bit. And you can feel it for yourself. So like I said in the lecture, the condyles really route the three main heads of the quadriceps down different routes to the patellar tendon, right? And that's kind of what this serves to help keep that in a good position to pull when the knee is bent. So it's kind of a biomechanical thing rather than just an arbitrary shape thing. Okay, and I still have to pop it up a little bit because it's not high enough compared to this surface yet. That's kind of the point, that nothing on the skeleton is arbitrary. It's all evolved for a certain reason and has been optimized. So, for example, these little things that I'm doing on the back here, these are the structures, and I'll do some later down here, that the actual tendons end up grabbing onto. So the quadriceps tendon grabs on up here and kind of mates with this whole surface, and then there's some really kind of irregular stuff here where the patellar ligament grabs onto. Look at that. So that's the bottom bit for the patellar ligament. Few small refinement passes just to make shapes tidier. Little place for the lateral collateral ligament to come off of. And then just tweaking a little bit of the volumes of the condyles, and soon we'll be finished. This is what I'm talking about. So this is the last kind of aspect, is tall on this side, short on this side, and there's also a convexity out here that actually, if you just imagine just imagine the vastus medialis flowing over top of this round convexity. That helps to maintain that teardrop shape. And then this helps to maintain this lateral mass pulling into the knee. And then straight down the middle, rectus femoris. Okay, and I think we're finished. So that was a quick little time lapse to get us to this place, and you saw the final renders. So it looks good and it's fun, and it's quite informative to actually have to go in and sculpt those structures. And then the last bit is to compare them against the original surface that you were sculpting, right? To make sure that all the landmarks that you sculpted superficially line up with the landmarks that you have on your bone, right? So there we go. There's a leg, head of the fibula, etc., etc. Okay, I hope that was helpful and a little bit fun. It's really instructive to do these kind of exercises now and again. Okay, thanks.